Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lello.
I was joking about messing up the introduction, and I couldn't even get to the guests. So, but fortunately, we have a good guest for you today. We've got Will Dages from Findaway Voices, which is a service that allows you to find narrators to produce your audiobooks and will also help you distribute finished audiobooks to the various markets. They're kind of a alternative to ACX and Audible that I am checking out myself. I just uploaded my first non-exclusive with Audible audiobook, so I dug up Will's name and I said, could you come on the show and tell us how to market and sell audiobooks? And Will, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Findaway Voices?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, that's awesome. I'm glad to have you on the platform. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on that. So, my name is Will, and my title is Head of Product for Findaway Voices. And basically, what that means is I'm in charge of the experience that authors and narrators have. So, if you sign up for our platform and you have a bad experience, it is my fault. So come yell at me. Like you'll be able to find my contact information through here. But that's the only way we get better. So Findaway Voices is a platform that lets you sell and create audiobooks. So if you need an audiobook created, we will match you with a narrator and manage the production from beginning to end. And then when it's done, we can help you distribute it to about 30 distribution partners, including Audible and ACX, non-exclusively. So we are a wide distribution platform. We believe in putting your audiobook everywhere that listeners are looking for it. And we consolidate all those 30 royalty reports into one easy payment for you at the end of every month. It's important to note that you can distribute your audiobook with Findaway Voices whether or not you produce with us. So it's totally fine to bring an already finished audiobook to us, just upload the files, enter the metadata, and hit go. So we've been around for about a year now, and we have seen some really fun things happening in the audiobook space in just the last year. A lot of growth, a lot of momentum, a lot of exciting things still on the horizon that I wish I could talk more about. But there will be some more fun announcements before the end of the year as well.
Yeah, I actually had a narrator that I liked to work with already, so I had her do everything just as if we were doing it through ACX because that's how I first met her. And it was a pretty easy process to upload all the MP3 files for the individual chapters on there. And I think it took maybe about 2 weeks before I got the notification that my book was out there. And I think I may have even found it on Google Play before I actually got that email. Could you tell us where all the audiobooks go?
Yes, absolutely. I should have the list in front of me right now. I don't. There's 30, and I'm not that good at memorizing those things, but I can tell you the highlights. Um, and the reason you saw that on Google Play first is because we send out an email when it's fully distributed everywhere. But when we're working with 30 distribution partners, we send it everywhere pretty much right away within the first couple days. And we liken that to we've delivered it to the warehouse, right? It's up to the storefront to stock the shelves. So we deliver the audiobook, but it can take a little bit of time for some retailers are faster than others to get it up for sale. So we watch that and let you know when it's fully distributed. But we hit library channels, we hit retail channels, we hit subscription channels. So notably, Audible, ACX, we do Nook, we do Google Play, we do Apple, we do eStories, we do library partners like 3M, Baker and Taylor, Overdrive, Hoopla. We do subscription platforms like Playster, Scribd, HiBooks, which used to be called Auto. They just changed their name. And those are the ones that I can tell you off the top of my head real quick.
No problem. And for those authors out there that haven't yet produced their own audiobook, we should point out that if you go with Audible/ACX exclusive, they give you 40%, but then the only places you get to be are iTunes, Amazon, and Audible. And so I'm trying this now. It means being 25% with ACX Audible. And then what is it the same percentage for you guys?
Yes, it's the same percentage for us. So that's the calculation that you have to make in your head is, Audible is a big slice of the market. There's no doubt. And they are a powerful player in the audiobook market. But with that 40% royalty rate, you're also agreeing to a 7-year exclusivity term, right? So it's not a little short term. 7 years is a really long time. In the audiobook industry, has changed a lot in the last 7 years, and it's going to change a lot in the next 7 years as well. So you got to balance that. We offer the same royalty rates, 40%, well, just 25%. All we do is non-exclusive distribution through us. So, and we're not an all or nothing deal. So if you want to distribute yourself through ACX non-exclusively and use us for everything else, that's totally fine too. You can check and uncheck the boxes for every one of those 30 distributors.
Okay, and it seems like until recently, nobody was really buying audiobooks anywhere except maybe iTunes and Amazon, but it's like Kobo's getting into it now, and
Yep.
Google Play. I'm not sure how they'll do yet for audiobooks, but they've really come on strong recently for ebooks for me. So it seems like a good time to, try to get stuff out there, but we can't yet go direct in most of those places. I think Kobo is working on something, but most of us don't have a way, so glad
In the
that you
meantime,
guys are here.
we can get you to Kobo and Walmart. Walmart just launched audiobooks too, and they have a partnership with Kobo, so we can get you to both of those places as well. Yeah, we've seen a lot of growth in audiobooks. For a lot of authors, it's still not going to eclipse your ebook sales, but it's an important channel to not neglect, especially with the growth that we're seeing. And in non-audible channels, the rest of the market is really healthy. Particularly, we're seeing some really interesting things happening in the library market, which we'll touch on that a little bit more when we talk about marketing, because we got some interesting stuff going on there. But also leveraging subscription platforms, the ones that operate like Netflix, where somebody pays a monthly fee and they get access to all the audiobooks. Those platforms like Scribd and HiBooks and Playster can be a really great place to have people discover the first book of your series or stumble upon you and try it risk-free. There's some interesting things going on in those platforms too.
All right. So for a long time, ACX was the only game in town for indie audiobook production and all that. And obviously, Findaway Voices offers. Well, is Findaway Voices basically a one-to-one service parity? Like, do you offer everything that ACX does? Is there any glaring differences between the two services?
There's two big differences. One, ACX offers a royalty share option, so you can pay nothing up front for your production. And if you find a narrator that is willing to agree to do that, you split your royalties 50-50 for the next 7 years. And you're locked into exclusivity at that point too. So you're just in the Audible ecosystem, which makes sense. They want to be able to track all of the sales so they can evenly split that down the middle to share with the narrator. In that model, the narrator's taken a little bit of a risk on the project, and sometimes it pays off great, sometimes it doesn't. But more often than not, we hear stories about really savvy narrators going through, and the narrators will really approach the authors for this, and they'll pick out the high profile targets. And if a narrator approaches you very excited to do your book for free, it might be a good indication that you want to perhaps consider keeping all of those royalties and making the investment to keep all of your royalties in perpetuity. So Findaway Voices does not offer a royalty share option right now. We only offer pay for production. So that means a narrator has a per finished hour rate, and that is the rate that you pay. The way that works is you pay for the finished audio. So if it's a 6-hour book that the listener will listen to, that 6 hours is what you're paying for. It doesn't matter if it takes that narrator 12 hours to make it, 30 hours to make it, 60 hours to make it. The author is only paying for the finished hours. And generally we see those rates in the 150 to 300 range. The other difference between us and ACX is an open marketplace, and we take more of a curated approach for production. So when you go into ACX, you can browse through 80,000 samples of narrators. You can do the searching, the filtering, you can listen to all these samples to find the one you want. And in Findaway Voices, we take a little bit of a different approach. We have a casting team. So when you start a project with Findaway Voices, you upload your manuscript and we ask you a series of questions. They range from, it's about 10 questions, and they're not all mandatory, but we want to get a feel for what's the voice in your head? What is the main accent dialogue of the main character? What are you feeling for tone and a whole bunch of other things? And then those answers go to our casting team, and our casting team has spent a lot of time working with narrators. They onboard the narrators, they catalog the voices, they do a big long interview with every narrator to classify them as far as what they say they can do, and then we listen to the samples and even augment it with more data. And then it's a mix of art and science, where we have over 1,000 narrators onboarded at this point that we work with, And we'll use some of the easy filters like male, female voice, what languages can you speak, to narrow down that list. And then our casting team will recommend 5 to 10 narrators for the author to listen to. So instead of listening to browsing through 80,000 samples, you're listening to just a handful, and we kind of zoom you right to the semifinal round there. So that's the other big difference.
Okay, so I have to ask you, you mentioned that for those, you can still bring your own book, even though it's already been completed by someone else, obviously. Yep. And let's just say in this example, since some of us are on questionable terms with ye almighty Amazon, what happens if you have a book that's been released through ACX, it's available on Amazon, and they're only selling it through their 3 distributors, iTunes, Audible, and Amazon. Are you still allowed to use your services without irritating said deity?
Yes, as long as you're in non-exclusive terms, there's no problem at all. Yeah, if you did sign an exclusivity contract that's 7 years long, there is a clause that after the first year you could request to go from exclusive to non-exclusive terms, as long as you paid for production. If you did that royalty split, they want to split it down the middle, and that's only fair to the narrator because they took a chance on that project, right?
Right.
But there's no irritating Audible when you're on non-exclusive terms. They expect you to go other places.
So you're allowed to, even if you have like the royalty share with someone, that royalty share transfers over to Findaway too. And how's that work? Or you have to have it? You can't do royalty share.
You can't do it with royalty share. Yeah. So if you do royalty share, you're locked into exclusivity for a full 7 years. Once that 7 years is up, you can do whatever you want with it. You can go to non-exclusive terms. Now set a calendar reminder. They're not going to let you know the 7 years is up unless you ask them to move on there onto non-exclusive terms. But once those 7 years are up, you can go down to the 25% royalty rate and start going to all the other distributors if you want.
All right, now for people who are interested in narrating their own audiobook, like you talk about, you've got your curated list of narrators. Let's say that somebody wants to do their own audiobook, or they want to join the list of narrators. Like, what's the bar to entry? Do you need like a full studio, or can the audio quality be achieved with like a home setup?
Yeah, the audio quality can absolutely be hit with a home setup. We have some very clear guidelines. We work with 30 distributors, so we took the strictest guidelines throughout all of those and came up with one set of standards that if you meet these audio specs, you are good to go. So those audio specs apply to whether you narrate your own audiobook and upload it to us, and they also apply to every narrator that we work with. And when a narrator is uploading the samples that they have for just the stock samples of their best work, we're also running those through to make sure that we catch any red flags early in the process. So 2 things I want to mention on that. One, if you want to work as a narrator with Findaway Voices, you can just sign up on our website. There'll be a questionnaire. There'll be a way for you to upload your headshot, your rate, your bio, your samples, and we'll also send you an extra form to do as a one-time onboarding. Once that's all done, and you fill out your tax forms so that we make sure we're able to pay you. We won't cast you for a project unless we're sure that we're able to pay you at the end of it. Then you'll be in our system, and our casting team will be in touch with audition requests after that. If you're interested in narrating your own audiobook, which is for some people a great option, for some people it's not a great option. One of our favorite ways to test out whether it's a good idea or not is to have you go through our audition process, because that's free of charge. So let me set this up. So you want to narrate your own audiobook, pick a 5-minute sample, read it yourself the best you can do, make sure that you're trying to hit those specs and you don't have any technical problems doing that. Then let us cast your book. We'll go through the process. You'll hear some samples, pick your favorite 2, and we'll get auditions for that same 5-minute sample from the narrator free of charge. And you take those 3 and send it off and do some A/B testing. I'm a marketer. You guys are marketers. Love A/B tests, love data collection. Find some people who aren't familiar with your voice and pit it up against some narrators and see what the feedback is. If the feedback is positive for your voice, or positive enough that it doesn't make sense for you to pay $1,000, $1,500 to hire a professional, and that might be a great option. If not, and you're blown away by the quality of the narrator, awesome. You've already found the narrator that you want to work with then. So it's kind of a risk-free way to test the waters.
Are there any red flags that we should be, or like authors should be made aware of? I mean, is there anything that someone can do? Like they try and submit like a certain genre of book through you guys, and you're like, no, that's not going to work for us.
We take just about all content. We do have some content guidelines. So, bestiality, rape stuff, we stay away from that. But everything else, we take just about everything.
All right. In that case, I mean, is there anything that you've noticed, genres that work better than others? I mean, is there anything that's trending like right now, like the epic fantasy, the sci-fi, the mystery?
Mystery is hot right now, and romance is hot. So sweet romances and southern romances are really hot right now. We're seeing a lot of books of those flow in, a lot of success, especially on the subscription platforms where people can binge read them one after another. Those are doing very well there.
One thing that we didn't actually talk about is that unlike with Audible, you actually let us choose our prices. And I was kind of curious when I was uploading my first one, like what should I do with this? A little less than maybe Audible would do, especially for a book one, trying to get people in. What are your recommendations there?
Yeah, that's a great point that I had forgotten to bring up. So thank you on that. Yeah, so when we distribute your audiobook to both library and retail channels, you're able to set your list price. And just to be clear, that's the price that you'll be paid off of. It's not necessarily the price that the consumer would see. But if you have a 45% royalty rate and you set your list price at $10, you're making $4.50. Doesn't matter if the retailer sells it for $8 or $7. You're making your royalty off that payment. And we will send that list price to everywhere that will take it, which does not include Audible. So we distribute to Audible, we'll send them the price, they just ignore it, it's fine. But basically, you want to think about the length of your audiobook and what it's up against for the credit worthiness. So we're seeing some interesting things happening with shorter content as well, which we'll get into in a little bit. But if you have say an 8 to 12 hour audiobook, pricing it a little bit less than that credit price is going to be very effective. So, the Audible credit is about 15 bucks. If you set it in the $12 range, it'll feel like a discount to anybody who's price comparing.
Yeah, I went ahead and picked $12.99. It seemed like a good number. And are the other subscription services out there kind of similar to Audible at that $15 a month kind of credit?
The subscription services work a little bit different on pricing. It can get a little complicated. Those are actually not based off of a full list price amount, but they're based off of, well, all of them work a little bit differently. Basically, it boils down to how many people are listening and how big of a slice of the pie your listening accounts for. That's what it boils down to. So the more people are listening, the more money you make on those. It's hard to boil it down to a straight list price, but it is based off of the list price that you set. Is that
okay? No, that's fine. I'm not familiar with the other subscription services at all, so I don't know if they're undercutting Audible or if they're just kind of right on par with like what they charge to
Oh,
listen.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking straight subscription, like Netflix model. If we're talking credit subscription model, where you're paying for a token that you then exchange for any audiobook on the platform. Um, let's take Kobo for example. They do that. They still pay out on your list price that you set, and you can set whatever list price you want. So there, it may actually be effective to set a $23 list price or something like that.
Okay, no, and that's good for you to point out that there are some out there where I assume it's like all they can listen to in a month kind of thing, like Netflix, you said?
Yes. Yeah, like Scribd, I think is 9 or 10 bucks a month, and you pay that and you get access to all the ebooks and audiobooks that you want to listen to. There's a couple other services like that.
Okay, and I noticed I could set my retail price, and then I also had the option to set a different price for libraries. Should I set a higher price since potentially more people might listen to that?
Yeah, the common strategy around that is to choose a price that's 2 or 3 times higher than your retail price. The reason being is that the way that library pricing is going to work is you make one sale to a librarian, and they have one copy that can circulate forever, basically. So for the rights to circulate that one copy forever, you want to charge a little bit more, and librarians are used to paying that.
All right, good, because Christine from Kobo said the same thing when she came on. I had never really thought about that. I was like, oh, I should charge less so that the library will, pick it up and share my book.
Whatever you set it to is probably less than they're used to paying for the big 5 publishers.
All right, good to know. And one more question on pricing for me. Does Google Play, because they are known for discounting our ebooks. I mean, there's charts out there that show you how much they will discount it. So you have to price your book higher because they'll discount it. Do they do the same thing with audiobooks, or do they go by what you set?
Google Play will pay you off of the list price that you set. So I believe they're at a 45% royalty rate, which is very good for the audiobook world. And no matter what they sell it for, they will be paying you 45% of your list price.
All right. So just as a matter of coincidence, literally this morning I got my invoice from Findaway Voices, because I've got 2 books on there, and they're oddball books, so they're not exactly burning up the charts, but they one question I have is, how often does Findaway pay, and like how far offset are the payments for people who are sort of looking forward to that sort of thing?
Sure. We pay monthly, and we pay within 30 days of when we receive the royalties. So basically, we pay monthly, delayed by a month. So the way it works is, say you make a sale on January 15th. At the end of that month, the retailer wraps the month. By the end of February, they pay us, and then we pay within 30 days of when they've paid us. So a January sale will come to you no later than the end of March. The money.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more thing is, do you have like minimums that you will pay? Because I remember early on in the ebook biz, you couldn't get a payment until you made $100, and then it started to get lowered. But so what's the policy with Findaway Voices?
Yeah, right now we do have a $100 minimum threshold for payments. So things accrue until you hit that $100 mark. And we'll always pay it out at the end of the year, just so we wrap up taxes nice and clean.
Okay, so my question for you is, after having seen probably numerous self-created audiobook files go through the system, is there any bits of advice you can give the authors, like use a better microphone, make sure you edit your books, get an editor, that sort of thing? What would
Yeah.
you suggest?
Yeah, I would definitely make sure that you don't record too much before you're sure that you're hitting the specs. So don't record the whole audiobook and then make sure it's going to pass the specs. Do a 5-minute section or a 15-minute section. Make sure that you're going to hit the bit rates, the head and tail, the RMS, the peak values, all of those things. And we have those all laid out in our narration guidelines. If you have any questions about them, you can always reach out to our team. And then if you also want to send something ahead of time, we can run it through our processes and make sure that it's going to pass for you. If it's an audiobook that's already created, and you were not the one who engineered it, you have the files, you just want to get this for sale, we'll let you know when you upload it if it meets our specs or not. And if it's close, we have some audio engineers on staff. We'll just get it over the finish line there for you. If it takes a lot of work, we'll offer some discounted rates for mastering and engineering services that we can do in-house. Some other things just to keep in mind while you're recording. What sounds quiet to you now might not actually be quiet to a microphone. We've had some pretty funny things submitted to us, like somebody recording outside at night with crickets in the background, or eating potato chips. Those things don't fly. Those will not make it through the quality checks. So make sure you're in a quiet room. Make sure you have a good microphone. Make sure that you're recording a little bit and able to hit those specs. Pardon me. Able to hit those specs before you take too much time. And also pace yourself. Make sure that you're not going to take on too much in one day. It's especially when you're doing character voices, it can be more exhausting and straining on your vocal cords than you might expect to sustain a long period of recording. Your voice will be tired by the end of the day if you try to record 7 hours in a day, especially if that's not something that you're used to doing. So take it easy, take it slow. When you're picking up chapter 2 tomorrow, read the last paragraph or 2 of chapter 1 just to get yourself back in the swing of things by the time you start picking up chapter 2.
Yeah, I remember checking out like podcasting for dummies several years ago, and I imagine it would all apply, and they recommended
Yes.
like find a closet or something in your house that has, like carpeting, so, and some clothes around you, just so that nothing's echoing off the walls. And I thought it sounded like a lot of work, so I pay a narrator.
It's a lot of work, but a closet's also a very cheap recording studio.
So for those who already have some audiobooks and they're trying to figure out how to get these suckers to sell, let's move on to a few marketing questions.
Yeah.
What are some general things I can do to my audiobook to make it more appealing in the markets you guys distribute to, or I guess just more appealing in general everywhere?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the tips are going to be similar to what you do in the ebook space, right? You want to make sure that you have a good cover. Audiobook covers are square. They're not the same aspect ratio as ebook covers. It's worth taking the time to make sure that they look good as square if you have the original art files or whoever created your title for you. Don't just throw letter boxes on it. It won't look as good next to all the other titles. So that's an important one. Make sure your metadata is sound. If you have some references to the print book, make sure you just change them to audiobook. Make sure that it's well formatted for the context in which listeners are browsing for your books. Spend time on the metadata, make sure it's categorized right, make sure it's showing up, every book in your series is labeled correctly so that it's bundled together on the distributors right. And probably most importantly of all, make sure your audience knows you have an audiobook. I'm always surprised at how many book launches focus on the print book and the ebook, and either ignore or don't leverage the moment enough to let their audience know about the audiobook as well. We have a couple different release strategies, especially if you're doing series and stuff. Kind of boil it down to 3 release strategies, which is simultaneous release or staggered release or what we call drop and drip. So won't go through all of those, but I will say that a simultaneous release, if you have your audiobook ready the same day that you're launching your ebook, we see about a 20 to 30% increase in your audiobook sales. That's the time everybody's talking about your audio or your book, thinking about your book, and when an audiobook lover sees your book, they will go search for it. And if it's not there at that time, you're going to miss out on a lot of sales.
Yeah, I've only very rarely, in fact, twice, I think, managed to get it out. This last one was the first time I got it out at the same time as the ebook. I actually had the audiobook ready in advance for book 1 anyway. I write pretty quickly, so it's a bit of a delay to get book 2 out. But I agree, I've definitely noticed the sales are much better if you get the audiobook out while your ebook is, you're doing all your launch stuff and you have the momentum. But a lot of indie authors do the audiobook later, just because they're waiting to see if the book sells well, or they get the money saved up so they can do it. Any things they can do, besides emailing their list to, I guess almost like doing a second launch, if it's like 6 months later.
Yeah. So, just to back up a little bit, I don't want to minimize the amount of effort and strategy that goes into doing a simultaneous release, because an audiobook production can take 6 to 8 weeks, right? If everything's moving along at a good clip. And that's 6 to 8 weeks that your manuscript is finalized and not selling. So that is a 6 to 8 week gap in sales of your ebook, and you're missing out on that. You need to make sure that that makes sense for you. If you bump your audiobook sales 20 to 30%, is that worth not having your ebook for sale as soon as it possibly can be for sale? Because obviously the manuscript needs to be finalized so the narrator knows what to read. So you do have to have some lead time baked into that. However, a lot of people do release the ebook, make sure that it sells well before they know that they want to invest in the audiobook. And in that case, when your audiobook comes out and it's finished, it's absolutely another book launch. You should be treated exactly the same. You should be letting the world know that your audiobook is out, even to your ebook readers. They might be, doing recommendations and to friends. As far as discovery services and other ways to get the word about your book out, unfortunately, as of now, the BookBubs and the written word medias of the world only promote ebooks. We hope to see some more audiobook focused promotions coming down the pike soon. That will be more and more feasible as the audiobook market moves away from the credit subscription model. So when everybody's trading an Audible token for a book, it's hard to do a BookBub for that. As we move to more popularity to the Kobos and the Google Plays of the world, where you can have a little more control over your price and doing promotions, that becomes a lot easier. I will say, if you get a BookBub for your ebook, you will see a spike in audiobook sales too. Just that raw awareness of the book is going to lead to audiobook sales.
I've definitely had that experience, even with a free ebook. Like I have a 3-book series, or 3 books in the series starter that I've done for free on BookBub. And I actually put in the back of the book, hey, if you enjoyed this, there's an audio book out there too. And I always get a nice bump whenever I'm able to get a bunch of downloads. We've seen in the ebook world how the rapid release, like maybe holding book 1 and book 2 until you have 3 and then releasing them every couple weeks, can be really helpful for gaining momentum. And it's also, that's like if you have, like I finished book 1, like you were saying, like 8 weeks before I released everything, because I was going to work on book 2 and 3. So that can be a time when a way to do it that makes sense to get that first audiobook completed and be able to do the launch together. But you mentioned that that same strategy maybe can work with audiobooks if you're able to, whenever you're doing your launch, get like 3 done quickly. Does it make sense to release them all at once or maybe a couple weeks apart?
Yeah, we call that the drop and drip strategy. So you drop 2 or 3 books all at once. This is if you have a large backlist or the series is already done and you decide you want to go back and do the audiobooks. Audiobooks it's a time and money investment. You probably don't want to do the entire series and then drop it all at once. It's better to do the first couple books, the first 2 or 3 books, drop those all at once. Um, and then you have that momentum from the readers. It's going to take them a little while to get through it, but you know that they're going to be able to go from book 1 to book 2 to book 3 without stopping. And once they get through book 1, 2, and 3, they're in for every other book after that. So then you release one at a time, 6 to 8 weeks apart, and just you're using the same narrator presumably for this, so you can't have 2 or 3 books running at the same time. You just do them in order and drop the 3 at once, and then drip the rest out as they finish.
All right. So because you talk about the token system that like Audible has, it's incentivized a lot of people to make audiobooks as long as possible since it works out to a better value to the customer. Like now that you can set your own price and stuff like that with Findaway Voices, is it different? Like does the size of your audiobook very much change your marketing and performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen, from day one, a lot of success and a lot of momentum from bundles, just like, bundles and omnibuses on the ebook side. Same thing happens on the audiobook side. If you take your series and you bundle up 1, 2, and 3 together, and then all of a sudden that's a 26-hour audiobook, that's looking pretty good to trade your Audible credit in for. So if you have a series, you absolutely should be bundling it up. That's going to perform really well on Audible. Setting your price on other platforms leads to, like you said, a lot of really interesting possibilities and opportunities for shorter content to shine there. For the same reason, if you have a 1-hour audiobook or a 2-hour audiobook, are you going to spend your credit on that? Probably not. What we've seen, one of the most interesting things I've seen is releasing very short content, novellas, short stories as separate audiobooks that are teased at the end of ebooks. So imagine you have a 4-book series, and if you commission a narrator, they're not going to charge you less than 1 finished hour. So you might as well pay for the full hour, right? But if you have 4 15-minute short stories that are in between the series, or you take one character at the end of the book and you say, if you want to listen to a 15-minute short story about character X, download the audiobook here. It's 99 cents. And then you can release 4 audiobooks, 4 15-minute short stories for the price of 1 hour, talking maybe $200-300. And now you have 5 things to sell. You can sell each one of those individually. You can sell them bundled to all 4. And teasing those at the end of the ebooks to draw ebook readers into the audio world and test the waters is a really cool strategy to try to see how well you can convert, see where they're going, see what platforms they're gravitating towards. And also when those are out on the subscription platforms, people might stumble upon them. There's no barrier, no price transaction barrier to trying them out. So it makes sense that those could lead new people back into your series as well.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't actually considered, is doing the short stories. It's just been, it's a big investment of time and money just to do the novels, but it is interesting to think that is 99 cents sort of the bottom? You can't do like a perma-free audiobook kind of thing?
You can offer your audiobook for free. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah. 99 cents is just a way to bring in some revenue, and it's a 15-minute short story probably is not going to do well at anything higher than 99 cents.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that was kind of one of the first ways I got my ebook selling, was to have a free short story with the same characters and say like, hey, if you liked these characters, check out book 1 over here. So it would be interesting to try all those strategies on the audiobooks now that it is an option.
Yeah. And with the mid-range content, the 3, 4, 5-hour audiobooks that still have trouble standing up to the credit worthiness, pricing those at $9, $10, $11 is still a very attractive way to get people, price comparing those on other platforms.
Yeah, I feel like I have the Audible subscription myself as a listener, and if it's sort of like $7.99 or under, I'm probably just going to pay for it instead of wasting a credit. So
Hmm.
it does seem like it would be smart to kind of just stay under that that level as long as you're picking the price yourself.
Yeah, and Audible's posted prices are based on the duration of your audiobook. So although you cannot control what they sell it for, you can know what they're going to list that price as. So you can use that information and then strategically pick your price on all the other platforms.
I'm curious because with ebooks, they monitor like the prices, and if you're cheaper over at Google Play or Kobo, they're going to send you a little note and about like, hey, you have a deal in our terms of service that you can't sell this cheaper elsewhere. Do they do the same monitoring with audiobooks, or is it anything you need to worry about?
No, that's nothing you need to worry about on the audiobook side.
All right, good, because I've had a couple of people ask that. I'm like, well, I don't know. I think they get them from Audible, so maybe it's not quite the same as, if you were uploading your ebook directly.
Yeah, you're good there. The token system kind of obfuscates some of that from you.
Okay, I noticed you guys have promo codes.
Yes.
Is that for people to download them directly from Findaway Voices, and do they need a special app for that?
Yeah, so we introduced giveaway codes a couple months ago. So over the summer, ACX stopped giving out review codes for non-exclusive books. Now they'll only give those review codes for anybody who signs an exclusivity agreement, which excluded all of our titles because we only distribute non-exclusively there. So we wanted to fill that gap with something, and we have kind of an experimental platform right now that's in beta called Authors Direct. And we realized that we had all the infrastructure we needed to just launch giveaway codes there in a consumer-facing brand that was pretty nice. So every time you distribute your audiobook through Findaway Voices, we send you 30 giveaway codes, and they're just short alphanumeric codes that you can give to listeners. US only, US and Canada only soon. Next week we're opening up Canada, and we plan on expanding, beyond that soon. But basically, you give that code to a listener and the redeem page URL, and they type in their email address, and boom, we send them a link to the book, and they have a nice listening experience in the app with, Chromecast support and Google Play support and iOS and Android and a whole bunch of other nice little features in there.
All right. Sort of related. Are you familiar with like Story Bundle or Humble Bundle, where it's like a limited time,
Yeah.
non-distributor based thing? Not too long ago, I did a solo bundle with them, and I had briefly attempted to get audiobooks into it, and but it would suffice to say it was very difficult to determine a way that we could fulfill these audiobooks. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're talking about promo codes or anything like that. Is there any sort of way to sort of bulk purchase a bunch of giveaway copies to sort of fulfill a bundle like that for like a limited time, large scale promotion?
We'll give you as many giveaway codes as you want, but you can't sell them because then we run into some tax problems there. So um, the Authors Direct platform is in beta right now. So we can talk about this a little bit. This is kind of an interesting thing. Um, uh, so Authors Direct is a platform we built that will give authors 70% royalties on sales, and it uses Shopify in the background. And then it uses the Authors Direct iOS and Android apps for the listening experience for the listener. So Authors Direct could potentially support a scenario like that, where as long as the Humble Bundle listeners were in the US or Canada, one of the tax places that we support, we could generate some Shopify codes where they could go through the Shopify system. We'd validate the tax information. Even if it was free, we have to be careful about a couple of things there, and I can't elaborate on that because I'm not exactly sure what they are. But there's a scenario where something like that could be possible in the next couple months or year.
All right, that makes sense. And also because you guys are by definition non-exclusive, that would mean that you could, if you could find some alternate way to fulfill, like even if you sort of were internet savvy enough to be able to supply your own copies to the customer, then you'd be able to do that because there's no rule preventing you from taking your files and distributing them through some other means, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can upload your audiobook to us and just choose one distributor and go elsewhere. Sell CDs on the on the corner, whatever you want to do with the audiobook. It's totally your book. We're not a publisher. We don't assume any of the rights. We don't do any of that. So your book is your book.
Will Findaway Voices ever try to drop their prices and make their audiobooks the cheapest?
Well, so the way the pricing on the audiobook production works is we use narrators that are all independent contractors, and those narrators have full control over their rates. We don't set their rates. We don't coerce their rates up or down. We will, if you tell us that budget is a primary concern of yours, we will try to make sure that we present great options at the lower end of the range for you. But generally, we'll show you a range of narrators, and it's up to you to choose which one you want to go with and what price is right for you. But we only have so much control there because they're independent contractors and they set their rates.
Okay, so that obviously answers the question because I have on here. If not, does Findaway Voices have anything like Amazon's report a lower price option to be competitive with other sellers? So it doesn't sound like it.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, we were talking about audiobook production or the prices of
The final price to the consumer.
Oh, that is, I'm not sure that I understand the question.
Well, okay, so for instance, yeah, obviously we've talked about Google, and when you release a book with Google, they automatically drop it to try and make sure they've got the cheapest price. And a lot of times Amazon will try to price match you, even though if you don't want them to, they still do it anyway. So I was just wondering if by chance, with the overall price with your audiobooks there on Findaway Voices, do you have anything in place where you try to make sure the overall price for the consumer, trying to keep it competitive with everybody else?
Gotcha. We don't have any control over that, and we don't exert any influence over that. The way it works on Audible is you make your 25 or 40% based on whatever they sell it for. So that is a concern there, right? If they lower the price to $1.99 add-on for WhisperSync, right? I bought the ebook. Would you like to add the audiobook for $1.99? You're gonna get paid off of that sale price, not the full price of the book. Everywhere else sets your royalty payment off of the list price. So if your list price is set at $10 at Google and Google wants to sell that for 99 cents, they're still paying you $4.50. They're taking the loss on that. You're not taking the loss on it. So it's up to the retailer to set the sale price to the consumer. But basically everywhere except Audible, your list price is what you're being paid off of. Does that make sense? And did that answer the question? Okay.
Jeff is nodding silently while muted. That's interesting that you bring up the WhisperSync. I'd kind of forgotten about that. It used to be like $1.99 or $2.49. It seems like about a year ago they changed it so it's more like $7.49, $7.99. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because like you were saying, we make less on each sale, but you get more people reading your audiobooks. And I assume, and maybe you can tell me that the different marketplaces, how much, like on Amazon, you want your sales rank, you want to sell as many as you can because then you appear in the top 100 for your category. Is that how people are finding you on these other sites too? Do they have like top lists that you're aspiring to be put in?
Unfortunately, no, we don't see nearly enough of that. I think that would be a huge help to authors to be able to say I'm number one in this category. But the audiobook retailers, by and large, are not doing rankings. They're not doing top charts. I think that will be a huge help when it happens, and I'm sure plenty of them are working on it. But right now, there's just not an analog to that in the audiobook space.
Do you know on most of those sites, how are people finding you? Are like we responsible for all the sales, or are there search engines and things that they are able to stumble across your book in a category or something somewhere?
A lot of the bigger ones, obviously, Google Play is very good in indexing their store. So SEO is a concern or a consideration. A lot of the stores are indexed like that, so you can stumble upon it that way. The curation teams are bringing some of the more interesting titles to the front, and other than that, you're going to want to drive as many direct links as you can from any of the discovery that you're pushing on your marketing channels, your website. Make sure that you're linking directly to your product detail page so people aren't fishing for it in the store.
Now you've got me wondering if I should go back to my description and add an epic fantasy, fantastic romance in the keywords. Like I feel like Amazon, that doesn't work really on there anymore, but maybe some of the older school sites that aren't as happening. I wonder, because I remember Google Play kind of worked like that in the beginning. If you put like urban fantasy in your description, I heard from authors that did it that it helped and be found.
Yeah, I haven't heard too many specific stories about that, but I definitely think it's something worth experimenting with and trying with. Through our platform, you can change your description and hit republish once a month. And so you can do a whole bunch of tests a year if you want to and see how it affects rankings and stuff.
All right. Well, you mentioned that, there's not really a BookBub equivalent for audiobooks, but are there some sites out there that we can like submit to? I know Podium Publishing gets me onto Audfans, AUDFANS, and they've done like some of my novellas, like kind of like you were talking about, like a short story or something for free on that site. I have no idea if indie authors can submit to them, or if there's any place we could put up our short stories or something like that to drive sales.
I'm not sure about that one. I'm not familiar with that one, but Audiobook Boom is one that I'm familiar with. They do a weekly digest to their listeners, and you can use your giveaway codes to provide the free copies to those listeners. And it's a free book in exchange for a review kind of system. Other than that, I'm not too familiar with too many of those platforms in the audiobook space, mostly because it's kind of hard to deliver a free audiobook, most platforms.
Right. So we're talking about like there's not really a BookBub for audiobooks, and a lot of that comes down to until you were able to set your price, and you couldn't really do a price. You couldn't do a discount for your book. So now that you can adjust your price relatively quickly and relatively flexibly, should people be pricing their books with enough overhead that they can maybe once or twice a year drop the price and promote a price drop? And perhaps with that possibility, would sites like this be able to pop up?
Yeah, we actually support promotional pricing for a few of our distribution partners, Nook and eStories, and a few others, where you can actually see your normal price and then your discounted price with like the line through it, right? Which is a very effective tool. We're hoping more and more retailers support that. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. Price is definitely a lever in the consumer market that you want to be pulling and experimenting with. And I don't know. I don't know about twice a year, but when it makes sense, or when you have a new book in the series coming out, to experiment with the pricing on all the other books, I think makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense. And it's good to know that that people are messing with actually making a price drop into a discount, because that's something that a lot of indie authors struggle with, is like Amazon has a way to do it and Google Play has a way to do it where you can actually like schedule a discount and it reads as a discount. Every place else, it's just the current price that people may or may not know is is lower than normal. So it's good to know
Yeah.
that there's a mechanism in some places to highlight a price drop.
Yep, absolutely. And actually, Kobo's great at that. Kobo Writing Life, especially their ebook platform for those promotions, is fantastic. And they're doing promotional pricing for some stuff on the ebook or audiobook side as well.
Okay, so my last question for you is you teased us with a little bit about this earlier. Are there any improvements that you're allowed to tell us about that you guys are planning on, retailers, tools, that sort of thing?
I can't comment on anything that's unreleased, but I would definitely keep your eye on Findaway Voices, and I think there's some pretty fun stuff coming up later this year. The one thing I can talk about, because it's in beta, is Authors Direct. We touched on it a little bit, but the idea is it's your brand. The consumers are buying from you. We're just kind of powering the tech and taxes behind it. Before Authors Direct, the best way to sell your audiobook directly was to kind of through the Humble Bundle. You give your listeners an MP3 file and say, figure it out. And we saw that and wanted to step in and offer a good listening experience for listeners. And because the author does all the work on the marketing, the discovery, and the storefront, they make 70% royalties, which is far higher than any other retailer. So it makes sense. You're doing a little extra work, you should be making a very good royalty rate on your audiobooks.
Nice.
So that's still in beta. We're testing it out with 10 authors right now. You can kind of visit their stores and see what they're doing with it. Some of them are doing some really cool stuff on their audiobook site and putting it really tightly in with their ebooks and having the little SoundCloud embed player like right next to it, so you can listen to a sample right away. At authors-direct.com is where you can kind of see those authors. Other than that, we're working on some tools that we're going to be releasing in the next couple weeks and months to help authors create ads easier, to help them market directly to library patrons easier. Basically, some generated images with your book cover in an audiobook player, and some auto-generated text. So when you distribute through us, we know all the retailers that you're going to be on, and we can generate some images that you can use for Facebook posts or Google AdWords ads and other things to just kind of jumpstart some of the creative aspects of those campaigns to help you out.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check out your store. Maybe I can get a link from you after the show to see an example of somebody who's doing the Authors Direct, because it suddenly would make a lot more sense to use pay-per-click ads to drive them to your audiobooks. If you're making 70% of the retail price of an audiobook, it's like, hey, I could make $10 here on a sale, so I can spend 40 cents on a click maybe.
Yeah, exactly. That's the value there, is you can potentially offer your audiobook to the consumer for half the price of elsewhere and make double the royalty. It's a pretty compelling value. We'll see how it plays out. So if you go to authors-direct.com, we have links there to the 10 authors who are up and running with us right now and trying things out. So you can kind of browse all their stores from there.
All right, cool. I will be scoping it out. The challenge, of course, is getting the listeners to give up their Audible app and go over to this other store and download from there.
Yeah.
So last question, actually, this is from Anna. I just wanted to make sure and get it in. You basically answered it, but she was wondering about what the lower end was on prices for like a prequel type thing as a loss leader. And you said that free is fine. Is there any pushback on that? Because I wonder, because it's like a lot more bandwidth to download audiobooks, that would any of the partners out there object to like a full-size novel being free?
Nope. It's definitely more expensive to deliver an audiobook than an ebook. But I think everybody is pretty well aligned that first book free for a series is a really effective marketing tactic. And when you're talking at scale, you're talking pennies or dimes to deliver these audiobooks. So it's worth it if there's going to be a whole series worth of sales following it there. It's a great question though. I had something else that I wanted to add to that and I already forgot. Great question.
All right, cool. Well, that's about all we've got for you. Is there anything that we forgot to ask you that you want to say about Findaway or selling selling those audiobooks?
There's one thing that I've been talking a lot about lately that I'm interested in. I'm wondering if any of you have experience with library sales for your ebooks.
Just through our Smashwords is how I've got them.
I think I saw I had like 3 on, like my book is on So New on Findaway. I haven't gotten like an official statement or gotten paid yet, but it looked like on the spreadsheet I looked up there that there were like 3 and it looked like library sales. So I'll be curious.
Yeah, so the library market has, in the audiobook space at least, has 2 primary business models. The one we talked about earlier, where you're selling to a librarian, you set the price to 2 to 3 times your retail price, and they get the book, and now it's in their catalog, and it can circulate as much as it wants. But libraries are also starting to try out this pay-per circulation model, that's pay per, not paper. And basically what it works like Netflix, where a library takes everything and has everything available to their patrons. And then anytime a patron listens to your book, the library pays a fee. And this lets them take a merchandising approach as opposed to a curation approach. It also means for an independent or self-published author, you're no longer marketing your book to a librarian, you're marketing it directly to a patron. And that can be some really effective marketing to say, hey, my audiobook's at your local library, you can listen for free, and you get, a couple bucks kickback every time it's listened to. So we're seeing some authors starting to experiment with some pretty heavy patron-facing campaigns, some click ads that are directly targeting library patrons, and we're seeing 20-30% of their royalty statement are coming from 20-30% of their royalties are coming from library channels now. So that the traditional model with libraries, where you're convincing the librarian to buy, has always been tough for the smaller authors and the independent authors, because librarians primarily base their purchasing decisions based off reviews in the big library journals, which it's hard to get those reviews. And they also base their audiobook purchasing off of ebook. Whatever they're buying in ebook, they'll just buy it in audiobook. So this kind of opens up the market in the library space in a really interesting way. And it's it's always fun to do marketing where you can offer your things for free and still get paid for it.
Definitely, and I've heard it recommended from people who sell a lot of paperbacks that if you have a mailing list of fans, that it's a good idea to like say, hey guys, request my books at your library, because at least with the paperbacks, a lot of libraries will, if somebody requests them, it might take 9 months, but they seem to keep track and actually order them for their patrons.
Yep, same works with audiobooks too. Librarians love requests. They want to know what their patrons want circulating, and if you can get them to request at their library, for those traditional sales, it's totally worth it there too.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It just seems like I keep hearing about how big audiobooks are, and I certainly sell some, and I can't complain, but it seems like there's more potential, if you just crack that nut and really get out there.
It's an exciting space. This time last year, Kobo had just launched audiobooks. Google Play was not selling audiobooks. HiBooks was not around. There's new players, and Walmart wasn't selling audiobooks. That was just a month or two ago. There's a lot of new entrants and a lot of new big name retailers that are putting their money behind audiobooks and taking the bet. So it's an exciting time to be in the space.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And remind us where people can find you, and if there's anything you're personally working on besides Findaway that you want to plug, please feel free.
It's all Findaway all the time for me. I'm working nonstop on it. So you can find us at findawayvoices.com or on Twitter at Findaway Voices. And reach out and let me know if you have any questions. Love interacting with authors and learning from you.
All right, sounds great. We will put the links in the show notes, and I'll see if I can find that store and put that in there too. This is episode 200, guys.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
And marketingsff.com, come on by, and we'll have all those links for you. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Nice to meet you, Will. Take it easy.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.